While the cover fighters were fighting American planes southeast of the fleet, the last wave of bombers was approaching from the west, undetected. Met with no opposition, American bombers were able to drop bombs on 3 carriers. After the U.S. attack, Rear Admiral Abe Hiroki, who took command of the fleet after Akagi was sunk, had 1 aircraft carrier left at his disposal. Hiroki ordered a counterstrike against the U.S. fleet. The first wave of Japanese dive bombers set one of the enemy aircraft carriers ablaze. Yamaguchi, commander of the aircraft carrier Hiryu, already knew that the U.S. fleet consisted of 3 aircraft carriers. He decided to launch a second strike. Raid leader Lieutenant Tomonoga obeyed without hesitation, although it was a one-way ticket for him. He knew that his airplane would not make it back. His fuel tank was damaged in the attack on Midway earlier that morning.
There's also a fighter group coming from their position. This game, Japanese turrets, they're cannons, and they can one-shot on the same. But they can't, he's the same.
We found the second American fleet.
Yeah, so this must be a Hornet. So disregard, that must be a Hornet. And, yeah, that's the far part I can put out. Got hit by 5, no 4. He's got hit by 5. By the way, American flag, they shred the Japanese planes like freaking butter. My wings disabled. And that turns in Japanese planes in this game is very OP. Very OP. Gotta be careful with over there somewhere. There it is. I'm not going to go out there because I'm not so good. I'm gonna die if I can try that. Yes, my wings are slightly disabled.
One of them didn't make it. I saw his plane falling on the carrier flight deck. He damaged his fuel tank during the midway attack earlier this morning. He knew it was his last flight.
torpedo appeared to pass under the Hamman in the vicinity of gun number 2 and exploded against the side of the Yorktown. The second torpedo struck the Hamman in fire room number 2. This torpedo apparently broke the ship's back, as a pronounced sag was noted in this vicinity. Large quantities of oil, water, and debris were blown high into the air, coming down on both the Hamman and Yorktown. Commander Arnold Ellsworth True, USS Hamman. All power was lost, steam dropping immediately, and electric power failed completely. The rudder was jammed at about 15 degrees left, and the ship became dead in the water. USS Yorktown, report of action for June 4, 1942.
The Battle of Midway did not appear a complete defeat for the Americans, but it did destroy all the 4 Japanese aircraft carriers, including Hiryu. During the battle, the Japanese repelled all the first attacks, but only the 2 last attacks turned out to be decisive for the battle. The Japanese tactics of conducting operations fell short, and now the Japanese had to reconsider it. However, Japan had successfully landed on the Aleutian Islands, and it was time now to fortify the positions on the occupied territories by turning them not only into fortresses, but also into big airfield junctions. Besides, after the battle, several American aircraft carriers were also damaged, so the Americans suffered great losses, which demonstrated to the Japanese that the enemy would not be able to act on the offensive actively for some time. An airfield under construction on the Guadalcanal Island was to become one of the bases which would allow the Japanese to consolidate firmly their positions on the Solomon Islands. However, the Americans learned of that construction and landed troops on the island. They seized the airfield without a blow and commenced proceeding with its building up. The Japanese could not conceive that the Americans could fortify their position there, so the army landing troops were supposed to throw them back to the sea without any problem. Unfortunately for the Japanese, they underestimated the enemy forces and failed to dislodge the enemy by their first attacks. The battles on Guadalcanal and around the island grew into a prolonged military campaign.